Hello everyone, welcome back to Book Club Preview. I'm Michael, and today we're looking at The Body in the Library, Chapter 11 and 12. Not a lot extra going on here, but a few little nuggets that might help us see where things are going. First of all, Colonel Melchett and Superintendent Harper, they're stuck. They've interviewed everybody. People that have a motive for killing Ruby, they have an alibi. They have someone giving testimony or saying that they saw them at a different place. They have a story proving they weren't where the murder happened. Okay, it's an alibi. If they don't have an alibi, then they don't have any motive. Why would they want to kill her? So Colonel Melchett and Superintendent Harper, they're nowhere. They have all this information, but they have no clue who might have killed Pamela and who might have killed Ruby. They don't even know if the murders are linked, but they guess that they are. So they think maybe George Bartlett is the best person to think who's the murderer. But he doesn't have any motive. He doesn't have any reason to kill Ruby. In fact, he's pretty well off. He might not be the most smart guy unless he's acting, but he doesn't have any reason. There's no financial gain unless he's just crazy. But that is too easy. Now, they're trying to figure out a way to make Mark Gaskill the prime suspect, but Mark has an alibi, so other people have seen him, so he couldn't be connected unless Ruby was murdered after midnight. Then maybe he snuck out and killed her. So they call the doctor to try to see if the doctor will change his mind and say maybe she was killed after midnight, but the doctor says no, don't try and play games with me. I'm not changing what I said. It was between 10 and 12. You don't go after some innocent man, okay? And then he says, but I can tell you that Ruby was drugged first. So there was some drug that made her narcotic, okay? It kind of influenced her mind. And then while she was under the narcotic, she was strangled. So where are they? They're looking for some unknown person who's not connected to anyone they know. So they have X, and they're nowhere. They have no idea who's the murderer. That leads us to chapter 12, which is Mr. Jefferson wakes up. Wow, he feels great. And then he remembers Ruby. Oh. And he feels terrible. Mrs. Jefferson Part 2 of chapter 12, Mrs. Jefferson is sitting with Mrs. Bantry, and Mrs. Jefferson just starts sharing everything. Mr. Jefferson's son, Mr. Jefferson the younger, he was always in his dad's shadow, and his dad always kind of protected him and took control of everything. So when Mr. Jefferson got married and was on his own, he was really happy. But he tried to make his own way, and he didn't want any help. And he lost almost all the money that his dad had given him, but he wanted to keep it a secret. And so Mrs. Jefferson never told Mr. Jefferson the older about the financial troubles, because she didn't want to destroy her husband's reputation. But she was safe with Mr. Jefferson and expected that her son would get the inheritance. But Mr. Jefferson didn't really look at Peter as a grandson because it wasn't from his blood or anything, and wasn't going to give him the money. And so Mrs. Jefferson was really angry. She said, I was so angry I could have even killed her. She said, oh, that's such a terrible thing to say. And then Mr. Hugo comes, and Mr. Hugo hears and he says, yes, that is a very terrible thing to say. Be careful. There's something a little bit strange with the way he said it. It looks like in the book, maybe there's something there. We don't know. He could just be very protective. Mrs. Jefferson talks about how she neglected Mr. Jefferson during this time because she'd always been his son's wife. But the son is dead. But even then, for the last few years, his son's wife is not widow, son's wife. And she just got so tired of it that this summer she neglected Mr. Jefferson. She started dancing. She started playing tennis. She started getting compliments from other men. She just started to be free again. And because Mr. Jefferson felt neglected, even though he might not have realized it, then he felt lonely, and maybe that's why he went after Ruby. Part 3, Mrs. Bantry is sharing this information with Mrs. Marple, and Miss Marple is just reflecting. And even though she wasn't there with Mrs. Bantry and Mrs. Jefferson here in the story, she says, this is probably what happened. And Miss Bantry's like, oh, yeah, that's what happened. I don't think there's anything else there in that part. Part 4, Mark Gaskell's thoughts. Mark Gaskell's just sharing with Sir Henry. And he just, man, Mark is just, he just opens it up. He's just straight saying, man, I didn't like her. I have no money. I'm really hoping to get the old man's money. I'm not surprised she's dead. The police probably think it's me, but I don't care. And I'm really glad. And Sir Henry's like, dang, maybe this guy should be suspect number 1. Maybe he should be at the top of the police's catch this guy's list. Catch this guy's the murder list, which doesn't seem like it, but Mark is just straight and he doesn't have any morals. He doesn't care. He's just pretty free guy. Some vocabulary. Premeditated means planned. Do you think the murder was premeditated? Did they plan it before, or was it in a passion, right? And they think maybe it was planned. Ferreted out. Ferrets, I believe they live on the ground, okay? So they would have like weasels or something like that, okay? These kind of animals that are in the ground, and the dogs, okay, especially like weenie dogs or long dogs, they could go in that tunnel, and then the ferret or the weasel or the some kind of animal with the fur would come out. So ferreted out. Inspector Slack is going in, trying to find information, and if there's any information, it'll pop up. Ferreted out. Idiosyncrasies is unique small details or different slight I have here quirk. Quirk is a kind of random different event. Okay, so example, humans. Okay, all humans are basically look the same, 10 fingers, but there could be a quirk where for some reason your body just didn't finish growing that finger, right? Or an idiosyncrasy is kind of another thing. It's just a random small detail that's different. So maybe Ruby's body was somehow a little freaky and different, and she died after midnight. Doctor said no, she's normal, she's healthy. Walas, police walas, this is like involved with your police association, your police affairs, your police mind. Walla is a very informal way of just saying group or team or method. Narcotic, which we talked about, is a drug. Vapid, lifeless, dull, boring. So when Mr. Jefferson wakes up and he thinks of Ruby, he sees her face, and at first you would have thought innocent and pure, but now he sees her face and he just thinks dead. Scandal monger. Scandal is like some really bad, shocking news. Monger is someone who loves that. Okay, so we often use like warmonger, some ruler or king who's always fighting, trying to get into some war. Okay, weapons monger, someone who's selling weapons, loves weapons. Scandal monger, someone who loves gossip and bad news. People think Miss Marple is a scandal monger, but she's not. She's just very clear and curious, I guess you could say. Impelled is like pulled. So Mrs. Jefferson just felt impelled. She just felt pulled, like she just had to share what was going on in her life. Two more here. Infatuated means really interested in or even obsessed. I think of you see a movie trailer and it looks like this movie's gonna be awesome, and then you do research about the movie and the actors and you can't wait for it to come out, and you even ask your mom and dad, can we go watch this movie? It's gonna be amazing. And all you can think about is that movie. Infatuated. Usually in a romantic way, like a guy or girl being infatuated with the other. They can only think about that person and they love them a lot. Candor, which is Mark, he just straight, talks very clear, honest, and straight. We also say frank. He's very frank in the way he talks. That leaves us with our discussion question. Why do you think the murderer killed Pamela? Superintendent Harper and Colonel Melchett, they're kind of trying to figure this out. Well, why Pamela? Was she seen? Did she see something? Was she in the wrong place? Like, why did she get killed? We have no idea. Why do you think Pamela got killed? And of course, please make your own discussion question. That is all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.